color too. This time, stories like the little bear who saved Christmas because someone had stolen the gifts and he found them. Or Elmo saves Christmas because a poor family didn't have a tree and Elmo got 'em for them, or the story of a bearded man who comes from the pole on Christmas night and comes down the chimney and leaves us gifts. All these stories and others like them are an attempt by the world to make up for the lack of color that this time of year has if you do not understand and receive the true story of Christmas. Because the true story of Christmas doesn't need any extra gloss, because it is glorious, because the truth is glorious. As Christians, we know who the glory of Christmas is. We know that Jesus is the glory of Christmas, and his story truly gives color and light to our lives. All this month we have been reviewing the glorious story of Christmas from different angles and characters. We already talked about the angels, the shepherds, Joseph and Mary, and today we have to talk about some enigmatic characters who find their only mention in the Gospel of Matthew in chapter 2. 1-12. I am referring to the wise men of the East. Matthew 2, 1-2 says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea in the time of King Herod, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? They asked. We saw his star rise from him and we have come to worship him. Our story places us in space and time and tells us that this happened after the birth of Jesus, in the time of King Herod and in the city of Jerusalem, capital of the kingdom of the Jews. It happened that some wise men from the east arrived in Jerusalem. These are the enigmatic characters we were referring to. From all the illustrations and representations that we have seen, they seem very familiar to us and seem to fit into the picture, but the truth is that in the biblical story they have the opposite effect. The appearance of these people is most strange and unexpected. Who are these men? This is where tradition has filled the computer gap with many ideas that do not have biblical precision. For example, let's do a little test. 4 questions. How many were these men? What did they do? What were their names? When did you come to know Jesus? How many were these men? The answer is, we simply don't know. The Bible tells us that there was more than one. It says some wise men. But it doesn't tell us how many. Some people think there were 3 because they presented 3 gifts. Other traditions say that there were 2, 4, even 12 wise men. 704. What did they do? They are identified in the Bible as wise men. The Greek word is magi, like magicians, a word that we could probably translate as astrologer, or someone who studies the stars. They were scholars, students of the celestial bodies, and their signs came from the east, perhaps Persia or Arabia. Something is very clear to us. They were not kings, as they are traditionally known. Nor were they Jews. They were people from other nations or cultures different from the Jews, that is, in biblical terms, they were Gentiles. What are their names? Although you may very well be answering, Melchior, Gaspar and Balthazar, the biblical answer is that we do not know. Scripture does not provide us with that information. Not even that there were 3. When did you come to know Jesus? Perhaps guided by the illustrations of the birth, we might be thinking that it was the same night of the birth because we found him there next to the manger and accompanying the shepherds. But the biblical story places this story some time after the Nativity. Days or weeks had passed since the birth when they had that encounter with Jesus. How did you do on this exam? Be that as it may, what we must not lose sight of is that these men were scholars, scientists who came from other nations, who were not Jews or who did not live under the beliefs of the Old Testament, and, nevertheless, they arrived in Jerusalem with a disturbing question, which had made them travel many kilometers from the east to find the answer. His question was, where was the King of the Jews born? They had arrived in Jerusalem looking for an answer to his question, and that is why they had gone to Jerusalem.